In our previous episode, we witnessed the birth of the nation of Israel through the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Joseph's rise to power in Egypt saved his family and set the stage for what was to come, the emergence of the nation of Israel. Now, we journey through one of the most defining moments in the history of God's people, their deliverance from Egypt, the giving of the law, and their preparation to enter the Promised Land. Centuries passed, and the Israelites grew into a vast nation, but they were no longer welcome guests. They had become slaves under the oppressive rule of Egypt. Amidst this suffering, a child was born, Moses. Hidden in a basket and placed in the Nile River to escape Pharaoh's decree to kill all Hebrew boys, Moses was found by Pharaoh's daughter and raised in the royal palace. As he grew, Moses became aware of his true heritage. One day, he saw an Egyptian beating a fellow Hebrew, and in a moment of anger, Moses killed the Egyptian and fled into the wilderness of Midian. There, Moses married and lived as a shepherd for 40 years. But God had not forgotten his people. On Mount Horeb, God called Moses through a burning bush that was not consumed by the flames. He revealed his holy name, I Am, and commanded Moses to return to Egypt to deliver his people from slavery. Though hesitant, Moses obeyed, armed with God's power. Moses stood before Pharaoh, demanding in God's name, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused. God unleashed 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt, each one striking at the heart of the Egyptian gods and Pharaoh's power. The final plague was the death of the firstborn in every Egyptian household. But God spared the Israelites, who marked their doorposts with the blood of a lamb, the first Passover. This act of mercy led to Israel's liberation, and Pharaoh finally allowed them to leave. Thus began the Exodus, the great journey of God's people from slavery to freedom. As the Israelites journeyed, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more, and he pursued them with his army. Trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's chariots, the people feared for their lives. But God performed a miracle. He parted the Red Sea, and the Israelites crossed on dry ground. When the Egyptian army pursued, the waters returned, and Pharaoh's forces were swallowed by the sea. The people were free at last. Their journey through the wilderness was not easy. The people grumbled and doubted God's provision, but God was faithful. He provided manna from heaven to feed them, water from a rock to quench their thirst, and guided them by a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. 3 months after their escape from Egypt, the Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai. There, God called Moses to the top of the mountain, where he gave him the 10 Commandments and the law. These were not just rules, but a covenant between God and his people, teaching them how to live in relationship with him and with one another. The 10 Commandments formed the foundation of Israel's ethical and religious life. But the people struggled to keep this covenant, even as they witnessed God's power firsthand. While Moses was still on the mountain, the people grew impatient. They crafted a golden calf and worshipped it, turning away from the God who had just delivered them. In righteous anger, Moses shattered the tablets of the covenant. But through his intercession, God forgave the people and renewed the covenant, giving them the law again. God gave detailed instructions for building the tabernacle, a portable sanctuary where his presence would dwell among the people. He also provided laws for worship, justice, and community life. The book of Leviticus outlines these laws, including the system of sacrifices to atone for sin, symbolizing the need for holiness and purity before God. When they reached the border of the promised land, the people's faith faltered again. Afraid of the powerful nations inhabiting Canaan, they refused to enter, despite God's promise to give them the land. As a result, that generation was condemned to wander the desert for 40 years until a new generation could rise, one that would trust in God's promises. As their journey neared its end, Moses gathered the people one last time. The book of Deuteronomy records his final speeches, a call to covenant faithfulness and a reminder of God's faithfulness. Moses urged them to obey God's commands, to love Him with all their heart, and to teach these laws to their children. Though Moses was not allowed to enter the promised land himself, God showed him the land from Mount Nebo. After leading God's people for 40 years, Moses died, and leadership passed to Joshua, who would lead the people into Canaan. The Exodus and the giving of the law were pivotal moments in the story of Israel. Through trials and triumphs, God shaped a people to reflect His character, giving them laws to live by and promises to hold on to. In our next episode, we will witness the conquest of Canaan, as Joshua leads the Israelites into the land promised to their ancestors. It's a story of faith, warfare, and the unfolding of God's plan. Until next time, as we continue the story of God's people.